Currently, quite a few of academic agencies join network of institutions to help build semiconductor workforce. What's your opinion on this training pipeline?
Well, okay, two things. Number one, yes, there's no question that let's take two examples, Korea and USA. So let's say for USA, in the past, manufacturing was just outsourced to Asia. And so there was no need of so many skilled engineers. By the way, we have a lot of skilled engineers, but these are designers. The fabless companies are massively Americans. That's okay. Now, when we pull back the manufacturing, we need to find these skills engineers. That's the example of USA. But for example, Korea, which was always has been very strong in semiconductor, let me give you an example. The recent, embargo on technology means that the SK Hynix and Samsung investment in China are at risk. What does it mean? It means that Samsung and SK Hynix needs to pull back and ramp up further in Korea the manufacturing. Guess what? They did not plan that from a manpower point of view. So if you look at, you mentioned, I think, the USA, but if you look at the Korean government, they are extremely active. So if you look at, for example, Samsung, the amount of activities trying to find and prepare, train the workers of the future is massive. Going back to your question, I just want to mention few, I think, very nice ideas I've seen in the world. You mentioned about universities. Well, that's true everywhere, by the way. But in USA, and this was driven both by Intel and TSMC, they are now special crash courses in semiconductor to people working on vacuum technology don't to automatically know semiconductor, but with a crash course, you can convert a vacuum engineer into a semiconductor engineer. And one example. Second example is, and this is very famous at Samsung, Samsung has asked all their retired engineers to come back and help train because they don't have the people. And, I'm in favor. By the way, I'm not very, very young, but I think that pulling in the retired engineers of the past 5-10 years to become teachers, mentors, trainers of younger people, that's a fantastic idea. So yes, we're going to have shortages of manpower. And yes, there are a lot of excellent ideas on the table. Now, I think these ideas have to be customized and localized. So for example, China will not do exactly what Korea is doing. Japan will not do exactly. But, one of our Japanese customers is considering, based on our benchmark report, creating some form of training centers and pulling in people to help train these people. So yes, no questions, we're going to need more people in the industry. More people is not really the issue. The issue is that they have to be localized and they have to be in nearly all key regions. India, China, Korea, all of these regions are going to need a lot more. And some of these regions, Korea has a very strong base, but for example, India has not yet a very strong base. And Japan, to be honest, in Japan, semiconductor is seen as the past. This is not seen as the coolest technology in the world. I mean, semiconductor in Japan was cool 20 years ago. Today, young engineers don't want to work in semiconductor. So yes, very interesting topic. I think preparing the workforce, finding the engineers, motivating the young engineers to get into the semiconductor business, no question.
What China can learn from the cooperation between semiconductor companies and academic institutions?
Well, obviously, as I mentioned, China is in a certain position. So I gave you an example. India is pre-semiconductor. And Japan is post-semiconductor. China refers more to Korea. So if you look at the cycle of growth in the industry, I think that China is more along the lines of what Korea is doing, which means strong industry growing fast. That's so. I would say that if China wants to learn about preparing the work skill force, I would definitely recommend looking at what Samsung is doing. And again, I've mentioned the fact that Samsung is pulling in the retirees to do that, but the Korean government launched a massive effort into training. They created a center for training across all universities with support of all the key companies. That means Samsung, SK Hynix, etc. And I think they signed the memorandum in September last year, and they plan to have their first batch of 400 engineers coming out in September. So for China, I would recommend definitely to look at what is done around Samsung and the Korean government. I know, of course, the size of China industry economy is different than Korea, but from finding best known methods, I would definitely recommend that.